On the evening of April 14, 1865, Washington, D.C. was alive with celebration. The Civil War, which had torn the United States apart for 4 long years, had finally ended. Streets were filled with citizens cheering, waving flags, and singing songs of victory. Among the joyful crowd was a man who carried the weight of the nation on his shoulders, President Abraham Lincoln. That morning, Lincoln had woken up in unusually high spirits. The burdens of war seemed lighter now that peace was secured. In a cabinet meeting, he spoke with an energy that surprised those around him. Some even recalled him saying that he had never felt so happy in his life. To many, it was as though he sensed something beyond that day, a destiny already written. That evening, President Lincoln accepted an invitation to attend a play at Ford's Theater. He had been reluctant at first, preferring to spend quiet time with his family, but his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, convinced him to go. Together, they entered the theater with 2 guests, ready for a rare night of laughter and entertainment. The play, Our American Cousin, was a comedy, a light-hearted story that promised to bring smiles after years of sorrow. But lurking in the shadows was a man who saw Lincoln not as a hero, but as a destroyer. John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor, had spent weeks plotting revenge. To Booth, the South's defeat was a humiliation, and Lincoln was the cause. He believed that by killing the president, he could strike fear into the North and revive the Confederate cause. What he didn't realize was that history had already chosen his role, not as a savior, but as a villain remembered for betrayal. As the play unfolded and the audience roared with laughter, Booth prepared his pistol. He knew the theater well. As an actor, he had performed on that very stage. Slipping quietly through the corridors, he made his way toward the presidential box where Lincoln sat. The president was relaxed, enjoying the humor of the play, unaware that danger stood just a few feet away. At 10:15 p.m., Booth entered the box. He raised his small Derringer pistol, aimed it at the back of Lincoln's head, and fired. The crack of the gunshot echoed through the theater, freezing the audience in shock. Mary Todd screamed, reaching for her husband as he slumped forward. The laughter turned into chaos. Booth leaped onto the stage below, brandishing a knife, and shouted in Latin, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. The crowd gasped, unsure if this was part of the performance or a real nightmare unfolding before their eyes. Then, in an instant, Booth fled through the back of the stage, disappearing into the night. Inside the theater, panic and confusion reigned. Soldiers and doctors rushed to Lincoln's side, but it was clear the wound was grave. Not wanting the president to die in the theater, they carried him across the street to a boarding house. In a small, dimly lit bedroom, Abraham Lincoln lay unconscious, his breathing shallow, his pulse fading. Throughout the night, members of his cabinet, military officers, and ordinary citizens gathered outside, praying for a miracle. Inside, doctors did all they could, but the bullet had done its damage. Mary Todd, overcome with grief, held his hand, whispering through tears. The man who had led America through its darkest hours was slipping away. At 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln took his final breath. A stunned silence filled the room. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, his eyes filled with tears, spoke the words that would echo through history. Now he belongs to the ages. News spread across the nation like wildfire. Bells tolled in mourning, flags were draped in black, and millions of Americans wept openly in the streets. Lincoln's body was placed on a train and carried across the country, allowing citizens in every city to say their goodbyes. At each stop, crowds gathered in the thousands, men, women, children, many crying as if they had lost a father. The assassin, John Wilkes Booth, fled south but was hunted down just days later. Cornered in a barn, he refused to surrender and was shot dead by Union soldiers. His dream of reviving the Confederacy died with him. Instead of glory, his name became a symbol of betrayal and cowardice. But Lincoln's legacy lived on. He had been the leader who kept the Union together when it seemed destined to break apart. He had been the voice of freedom, ending slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation. His death, while tragic, strengthened the nation's resolve to continue his vision of equality and justice. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln remains one of the most shocking moments in American history. It reminds us how a single act of hatred can try to silence progress, but cannot destroy it. Ideas, dreams, and justice cannot be killed by bullets. Lincoln's life and death prove that true leadership leaves a mark far deeper than violence ever could.